I was recently talking to someone I love and they told me this: Javier, you should have been a millionaire by now. And as much as those words hurt and burned my soul, they're right. I've made some pretty dumb mistakes in my life. And in that self-reflection, I have found 3 mistakes that I have made that I am now going to share with you, the world, to hopefully help you and have you guys avoid these mistakes. Because the beautiful thing about real estate is it can be a great thing, even regardless of the market and how it's going. If used properly, it can be a great tool to get you out of debt and be like the first one in your generation to really create wealth. But you can also, like any opportunity, let it squander away. The first mistake I made multiple times in my life is I depended on the equity of my current home to buy my next home. Let me explain. The first house I purchased way back in the day was for $85,000. Now, this house had its issues. It wasn't in the best neighborhood. It didn't even have an air conditioning, ladies and gentlemen, but this is a house that we hold near and dear, and that our first baby boy wasn't born there, but we brought him home to that house. And the thing is, 2 years later passed, we lived in it for more than 2 years, and here in Arizona, if you own the home for more than 2 years and you've lived in it, you were owner occupied, you can sell it at a certain limit and have it be tax-free, basically. Please double check with your state rules and double check all that data. But we were at a point where we're tired of not having air conditioning. Let's sell this house and buy another one. So we sold that house for $120,000 about 3 years later. So once again, purchased it for $85,000, sold it for $120,000. So that profit was like what, $35,000? And then with that, obviously we paid our down payment for the next house. And at that time, we were left with like $25,000, $30,000, and that was like life-changing money. I remember thinking, I don't have to work a day in my life again. And that money went quick. Our second house wasn't as great. We bought it for $202,000, lived in it for 2-3 years, and we sold that for a whopping $221,000. So after commissions and everything, we left for maybe like $10,000. Was barely anything. That's another example where we were making better money and we were able to save up somewhat of a nest egg and before we moved on to the other one. But I just look back and I think that first house today is worth about $300,000. Remember, I bought it for $80,000, and that second house is worth about $450K now, and I bought it for $202,000. What if I would have been able to really apply myself, and instead of depending on the equity of that current house to buy my next one, save that down payment? Because really, realistically, a down payment isn't that much money. We're talking 3 to 5% of the purchase price at minimum to get into your next house. And if maybe you're buying it as a second home, 10% down at most. But if you really apply yourself, you can slowly start building a little empire. Now, obviously, we could have turned those houses into like nothing lucrative, meaning like we were going to make maybe a few $100 off of rent. Like it wasn't going to be crazy. But the thing is that when the interest rates dropped sharply, I could have refinanced them and we could have gotten into a better position. We're making more money. The rents would have gone up and I would have been one of those dirty corporate landlords that are raising the rate on people. But the worst part that really hurts me is these 2 houses could have provided security for like college funds for my family. If I would have found the way to hold on to these houses, like one of them could have been just held on to it, and when my son needs to go to college, 10, 15 years from now, or 10, 12 years from now, we could just get rid of the house and there you go, here's your college fund. The second house could have done something very similar. I could have used these homes to propel myself in the future point of time instead of just selling it for that short-term gains or short-term profit. So that's what really hurts to me is if I would have just applied myself, and it would have been tough, don't get me wrong, to save up that down payment for the next one, but it's just so easy to just depend on the equity and just say, well, we can just sell the house and use it for the next one. So when you do buy that first house and you want to move on to the next one, do what you can to hold on to it. Really do what you can to hold on to any piece of property you have. Realtors are really the lifeline of the real estate business, and it's crazy how the business of people shelter, like sheltering people, buying houses, selling houses, is commission based. Because when it's commission based, it's driven by what can realtors do to produce more sales. Maybe it's not your guys' fault, but it's as a realtor who depends on helping people buy houses and sell houses, it's usually positioned better. Just sell the house and then buy the next one, because then we can make double the commission on that one. I'm not saying they're entirely to blame, but it's just interesting how business of housing is commission based, and most of the time, quote unquote, it's like, oh, it's a better idea to just sell. Is it? The second biggest mistake I made was I used my high income or higher income than I was as an indicator that it was time to move up to the next house. What I mean by that? Well, I'm a self-employed. And as my business grew and I started making more money and I got to a certain point where like, hey, I'm making way better money than I was before. This mortgage payment isn't that bad anymore. That was like a trigger to be like, okay, time to move up. And, you know, that first house that we bought, 85, that monthly payment was like $600. I remember when I bought the house, I was like, $600. Oh my gosh, that's insane. What am I going to do? And then eventually, you know, I worked my butt off and I was like, okay, hey, I can afford this monthly payment. Like, it's a good situation. And then we moved up, and the second house was like a $1,300 monthly payment. I remember thinking, oh my God, what am I gonna do? And eventually I got comfortable with that monthly payment. I was like, hey, I got this, I can figure this out. And then as more money started coming in, it's like, hey, maybe we can get a nicer house now. And here's the thing, the alternative thinking could have been, hey, I'm making much better money now. Maybe it's time to put that extra money into savings so we can start saving for the next down payment. Maybe it's time we use that extra money to payments towards a mortgage so we can buy down and be debt-free quicker. A lot of times I think the problem that many people have, like myself, is we're only motivated when we have like these pressure points, like, oh, we have a higher monthly payment now, so we have to step up. Whereas like, hey, realistically, could I have been in the same level I am now with that payment house, $600 house? Maybe. Or is it the increased monthly payment that pressured me to be better and find different ways and make a YouTube channel and sell more houses, etc.? I don't know. Well, I guess the world will never know, but I like to think there is a middle ground where it's like, yeah, maybe you couldn't have made as much, but you probably could have had the house paid off if you would have just maybe hustled a little harder and you would have maybe found your way towards videos like this, right? I don't know. That's just my example. And the thing that's interesting is as that income started going higher, I started kind of coming up with excuses like, hey, like for that first house, it didn't have AC. I can't have my son living with no AC. What's wrong with me? Well, bro, you're making more money. Save up in 3 months, go freaking install a brand new AC, right? Or that second house, I think literally the reason we moved is because there was a shooting right outside of the house. Some guy got killed. It was terrifying. It was very spooky, scary. And we were like, we got to get the heck out of here. Now, maybe that one is a bit more justified, but like to go to point number one, maybe I shouldn't have sold it. Maybe I should have held on to it. But anyways, that's an extreme example. We were already thinking, oh, the school district, all this, that area. Like we were already having plans of moving. That was like the perfect, like, okay, launching point, let's get the heck out of here. But we find like these, oh, we need bigger space, we need bigger room, we need to be closer to this. It's just whenever that income started going higher, the excuses started kind of magically popping up and falling in line, and it created this perfect storm. Now for you guys, obviously maybe it's a little different. Maybe it's like social media. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, social media influences me too, right? Like having that bigger, nicer house in the stories and your photos and stuff like helps, right? It brings a clout. Social media is so toxic, isn't it? Anyways, whatever it is that's motivating you to move into that bigger house, a nicer house, maybe you're making more income. Maybe use that extra income to improve your house. Maybe use that extra income to, like I said, save the down payment for the next house so you can do it right instead of having that equity. And even if you do insist on selling, well, have the down payment still. So that way, that extra money you're going to sell, that's going to be extra cushion money for you to go invest in something, right? Maybe hold on to it for a big, like, rainy day fund or something. I don't know, but there's just better ways of doing it than the way I did it. And last but not least, my third biggest mistake, I could have taken better care of my homes. One of the greatest things I see when I'm looking at houses with clients is when you walk through a house that has a huge, like just a massive amount of this love given to it by the owner, like a true pride of ownership. And I used to think, like, in terms of sales, like, oh, this is great, this is very sellable. But as I've owned more houses, this is what I realized I did. Maybe this is something that you find yourself doing too. The first or second house, I was thinking in my head, this isn't my forever house. I knew that it wasn't my forever house, so I would like only repair things when needed, and I wouldn't get the nicest things, right? I wouldn't go paint the rooms. I would just paint basic white, and I wouldn't go all out. I wouldn't really have that pride of ownership. And now that I've lived and I've grown older, it's just weird, like having pride over where you live and maintaining it and taking care of it at only a level that you can. It feels a part of your soul. You can't really quite express it. And for me, at least personally, when that void was there, right? Because, you know, I would maybe hire landscapers to take care of the yard, or like in the previous houses, I wouldn't even do anything to it. I would just, whatever, I just live here. I don't want to, you know, maintain it. It was just terrible, like stupid crap. Like I would walk around the house and certain thing that didn't make me happy, I would just not fix it, or I wouldn't replace it, or I wouldn't buy or to get something that make it better. It would just be this sore thing, and I would just tell myself, well, this isn't my forever house. What that does, like I was saying earlier, is that it creates a void that gets filled with other things. And a lot of the other things that gets filled when I'm thinking like I'm about to tell you guys I did hard drugs or something. No, but you let things like the want for material things going. And at least me personally, it's what drove my quote unquote need to get into a bigger, more nicer, desirable house. And I would think, well, the next house for sure I'll maintain. The next house, I'll have a much better job keeping up with it or whatever. Like, we think the future version of ourselves is somehow going to be way better. But the reality is, pride of ownership doesn't matter where this house is, what kind of house it is. Pride of ownership is something that you carry within yourself and you apply to every house you ever have. And if I truly lived what I preached, and because I'll tell my clients, pride of ownership, like, take care of your house, and I would have had that pride of ownership from that first small house to that second house, I think I would have had a lot harder time getting rid of it. But more importantly, it would have been a different me. I'm telling you guys, there's quite nothing like it. I was the guy who hired landscapers, and quite recently actually, there was like a tree right outside of my son's door, and I hired a landscaper. Like, a landscaper comes and checks every day. I don't even like look in my yard or whatever. Hey, that tree's not looking good. I already told the landscaper, it's fine. Tree's dead. It's gonna cost a lot of money to replace it. And if I'm responsible for some kind of like turmoil in nature, it hurts my heart and it sucks. But really, it's on me. And now I cut my own grass. I maintain my own trees and plants. And being connected with your house and really being in tune with things going on in your house, things that need to get replaced, air filters every 3 months, stuff like that, is just fills the soul. And I regret not having done that sooner. I regret that it took me so long to realize, hey, truly love your house. Don't just live in it and beat it up and then fix it up when it's time to sell it, and then don't think about it ever again. This video is a little more opened up myself a little more, just letting you guys know I'm not perfect. I hope that you guys can take some of these lessons and really take them to heart. And whether you are in the preparing phase, whether you are in the searching phase of your real estate journey, whether you are in your I already own my house and I'm going to be buying a second or third house phase in your journey, whatever phase you're in, we can all relate to each other at some point. And just know that some of these lessons will apply to you regardless of that. So I wish you guys the absolute best. Thank you guys so much for your time. I'm gonna let YouTube decide what's the next video you should watch. So look at this video. Wow, it looks amazing. You should check. Look at that crazy thumbnail. Go check out this video. Wow. Thank you guys.